participant to open. I cannot share my screen because it is disabled by the host.
Can you share screen now?
No,
sir?
no, I cannot. I cannot.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it worked. Thank you. Sister Amelia, how long is my time to present?
Until 11:30, sir.
11:30.
Yes.
And then Prof. Mahfuz will join after that.
Yeah. In the second session on 1 o'clock.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Okay. As I mentioned, I will talk more about the concept of Waqf, and I will also touch some important issues regarding its development in the historical background, and we'll also discuss why Waqf accounting is important related to the agenda of Waqf revitalization around the world. And that is the outline of my presentation today. First, we will look into what is the definition of Waqf, how it is, what's the difference between Waqf, Zakat, Infak, Sedekah, and I'm sure many Muslim still confused regarding the difference between these terminologies. Waqf, Infak, Sedekah sometimes look similar, and it make a confusion among Muslims. That's why we have to understand in the first place the definition among them. And after defining the term of Waqf, we will discuss the pillars, or in Islam we call it rukun, that construct Waqf, and we'll also elaborate some issues regarding Waqf manager that become the in accounting we call it a reporting entity that become the focus of reporting and accounting system in Waqf standard accounting standard. And we will also discuss the types of Waqf, and the last part I will bring you to some historical background regarding Waqf, and also some accounting related issues in the past. All right. First, we look into the definition of Waqf. Actually, if we look into Quran at first, or maybe Hadith, there is no precise term that contain the word of Waqf. No word that precise mention Waqf in the Quran at first or in the Hadith. The only word which is maybe related to Waqf that we can find in Quran or maybe in the Hadith is sometimes described as sadaqah, infak, or maybe habs. Waqf is actually the synonym of habs or sadaqah, which can be found in the in many hadiths, but literally the word waqaf can be translated into to stop, to stand still, to halt, or not to let something go. Maybe all the, I'm not sure whether the participant are Muslim or not, but if you are Muslim and you recite Quran, you will find some sign in the tajwid, which is called waqaf, which means the sign to stop or to continue your recitation. So literally, waqaf means to stop or to halt something. But in the fiqh terms, waqaf can be defined as the act, as a deed of someone to preserve the principle of wealth and donating its benefits of years to the benefit of the societies or the community. And according to this definition, in the law number 41, 2004, waqaf is defined as a legal age in which a person, which is known as waqif, so the one who donate their asset as waqaf is called waqif, while in zakat, the one who donate their money is called muzaki. So waqaf is considered as a legal age. Why it is called legal age? Because based on the perspective of law, waqaf should be protected by the legal age, meaning that there should be a certificate on waqaf, which is later on will determine the way someone should record the waqaf. So it should be protected by the legal. That's why waqaf is called a legal age, which separates or donates a portion of the property and later on to be utilized, whether it is permanent or temporary. We will discuss later on regarding waqaf permanent and temporary, because I'm sure that most of us understood that waqaf should be permanent, but in some school of thought, waqaf can be also being donated in a specific period of time, which is called temporary waqaf. And waqaf should be utilized based on the intention of the waqif, where waqif during the donation should specify what is the purpose of waqaf itself, whether it is for the religious purpose, or maybe for the public welfare purposes, or maybe for other purposes. So this is the definition provided by the law number 41, 2004. And let me go back to the previous slide. In the area like the northern part of Africa, like in Morocco or maybe Algeria, the term that commonly used to describe waqaf is habs. So habs is more familiar, more commonly used instead of Waqf in those countries. But in the country like in Indonesia, Malaysia, and in Southeast Asia, Waqf is quite well known, and we use the term of Waqf in daily conversation, very extensive. All right, now let me see what are the differences between Waqf and this zakat, infak, and sadaqah. As I mentioned previously, among Muslim communities, there is a confusion regarding the differences between Waqf, infak, and sadaqah. Basically, the basic term to describe the action of donating something in Islam, every donation, every kind of donation is called infak. So once you donate something in Islam, it is called infak, because it comes from the term nafaka, meaning that you make something exit. That's why in maybe in Malay term, in Indonesia and Malaysia, when a husband gives something to the wife or to the family, they call it nafkah, because the husband gives something out, spend something out. Yeah, spend something out. That's the common term used to describe spending something out, infak. But in more specific term, we should make it clear between infak, sadaqah, zakat, and wakaf. Let me see, based on the hukum, wakaf, of course, it is optional. It is sunnah. It is not compulsory. Even though in one hadith it is mentioned that once the heirs of Prophet Adam alayhi salam already passed away, all deeds already stopped except three things, and one of them is sadaqatul jariyah, which refer to wakaf. Even though the rewards promised by Allah to Muslim by doing wakaf is eternal, even though someone already passed away, but wakaf in nature is sunnah. It is not compulsory. It is optional. Whereas zakat is compulsory because there is an obligation for a Muslim besides perform salah to pay zakat, and we can find many verses in Quran that mention the obligation of Muslim to perform salah together and paying zakat. In fact, in zakat, in another side, is also optional. But what's the difference between wakaf and infak and sedekah? Some Muslim scholars say that while infak and sedekah is kind of sunnah, is kind of spending out something that is not perpetual, wakaf should be perpetual, meaning that it should be maintained, it should be preserved, and only the benefit of wakaf can be transferred to the beneficiaries. So this is the way how we compare wakaf and infak, even though both of them are optional or sunnah. regarding the time, Waqf and also infak and sedekah is flexible in the way that someone can donate their asset anytime they want, but zakat is determined based on a period of time when and we call it like a lunar year or maybe a solar year, and there is a portion of the wealth should be spent by a Muslim on zakat, but it is not applied in Waqf and also in infak and sedekah. So we can see the flexibility of Waqf and infak sedekah in terms of that. Also regarding the beneficiaries, zakat should be given to the 8 asnafs, but Waqf, infak, and sedekah can be transferred to anyone. Waqf can be transferred to the member of the family or maybe to the public in large. Also, this is the case in the Waqf and infak and sedekah. And if we look into the assets being donated, Waqf should be invested, and the principle of Waqf should be managed in a very good way, so the benefits or the yields of Waqf can be later on be distributed afterward to the beneficiaries. But in zakat, once the amil is the manager of Waqf, receive the money, they should distribute immediately. So they are not allowed to invest, to manage, or maybe to make it productive in such a way. Rather, they have to distribute the money being collected once they receive it. In infak and sedekah, it is more flexible, where the managers have the option whether they want to distribute immediately or they want to invest it first, and later the yield or the benefit of the investment will be distributed to the beneficiaries. And regarding the ownership, many jurists or ulama, they agree that the ownership of Waqf belong to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, while the ownership of zakat and infak and sedekah belong to those who receive it or the beneficiaries. So this is the way we differentiate between Waqf, zakat, infak, and sedekah. Okay, if anyone have a question or confused regarding this definition, I allow you to raise your hand or maybe to ask the question through the chat room. All right. Now I move to the regulations regarding Waqf, particularly in Indonesia. Unfortunately, before 2004, there was no serious attempt made by the government of Indonesia to regulate Waqf. Waqf was like optional agenda by the government, where the main agenda more focused on zakat, haji, and other things, but Waqf left behind. So that was one of the reasons why Waqf in the past Indonesia did not was not developed very well. Regulation pertaining Waqf was mixed with other matters like Hajj, like Zakat also, and there was no specific and particular regulation regarding Waqf. Only after 2004, there was a serious attempt made by the government of Indonesia to enact one specific law regarding Waqf, and we call it law number 41 2004 on Waqf. And we should appreciate this effort that made by the government, because after the enactment of Waqf law in Indonesia, we can see very fast development of Waqf in Indonesia. Soon after the enactment of Waqf law, the government established Waqf board, which is called Badan Waqf Indonesia or Indonesian Waqf Board, that become the regulator of Waqf Indonesia. Prior to the establishment of BWI or Badan Waqf Indonesia, Waqf was under the supervision of Ministry of Religious Affairs. But we all know that there are so many things under supervision of Ministry of Religious Affairs, so it was quite difficult for the government to give this serious attention to Waqf development, because Waqf needs a professional and full-time attention to be developed and to be revitalized, and it cannot be managed in the part-time basis. So after the enactment of law number 41, there are several regulations, like government regulation number 42, government regulation number 27, and also the regulation issued by the Ministry of Religious Affairs regarding cash Waqf registration, and also some other regulation that issued by BWI or Indonesian Waqf Board. What I'm trying to say is that we are very happy that in the last few years there have been serious attempts shown by the government to revitalize or to revive Waqf. Not only in Indonesia, I can say that the effort made to revive Waqf also can be seen in many more Muslim countries, like for instance in Malaysia, in many Middle East countries, in India, in Pakistan, where the Muslim population exists, and the government made many things to revive or to revitalize Waqf, like for instance through seminars, to workshop, or maybe to publication and research that made by the academics in the universities. And I have witnessed that in the last 2 decades, the progress of Waqf revitalization is very fast, and we have to appreciate it. And one of the pioneer in the Waqf revitalization in the world is Islamic Development Bank, through its organ, which is called IRTI, Islamic Training and Research Institute. that continuously promote Waqf and its contribution to the betterment of the society. And if we talk about Waqf, we should also be aware regarding the pillars of Waqf, or we call it a rukun. Why it is important? Because without this pillar, Waqf will not be valid. So Waqf will only be valid once these conditions are fulfilled. First, the first pillar of Waqf is there should be a donor, which is called Waqif. So someone who donate their asset as Waqf is called Waqif in the fiqh term. The second one, the second pillar, there should be an asset to be donated or to be endowed, or we call it mawquf bi. I will elaborate one by one later on. And the third one, there should be beneficiaries, or the one who receive the benefit of the asset being donated. And the fourth one, there should be Waqf deed, or we call it sigot, or maybe in another time we call it akad. Okay, let me elaborate one by one. Donors or Waqif. Who are donors? Donors can be individual or organization. In the Waqf law in Indonesia, it is stated that Waqif can be a person or maybe organization, because give the opportunity to any organization, not only the individuals, not only personal, to donate their asset as Waqf. So nowadays we can see that some Waqf asset were created by organization, whether it come from CSR fund, corporate social responsibility of some company or organization, they donated as Waqf. That happen in some areas, and they should have the capability to endow their own property as Waqf. If we look into the personal donor or personal Waqif, there are some conditions of Waqif to be valid. The first one, Waqif should be free, meaning that she or he should be free to make any decision. So I'm sure that today there is no more slave, but this is just to give some underline that slaves cannot donate their asset as Waqf. So the one who is entitled to donate their asset should be free from any occupation. He or she should also has a sound mind, meaning that he's not insane. Sorry. So meaning that he will do the donation with his own willing, not under pressure. So that's why the condition sound mind is there. And also he or she should be mature. In Islam we call it baligh. And any transactions in Islam, this condition also apply. and not under guardianship. Actually, this one is related to the mature. So any kids under age, if it's still under age, they are not allowed to donate their wakaf unless it is based on the permission of their guardian. But it will be better if the wakif already mature, so the decision that he or she will make is not directed, or it's not influenced by any parties. So this is the condition of someone to be a donor of Waqf. All right. The next one is regarding the assets being endowed, or we call it Mawquf B. Regarding the conditions, the first condition is that the asset being donated or to be endowed should be mutakawam. Mutakawam meaning that can be utilized. It is very clear that in Islam, when you want to give something, you have to ensure that the one you want to give can be utilized by the beneficiaries, and it is also the case in Waqf. What does it imply? It implies that you cannot donate something like, let's say, I want to give Waqf, sorry, let me give one example. Okay, first, if you donate a land, a piece of land, or you donate a house, a building, or maybe you donate a car, machineries, it is clear that it can be utilized. But if you donate something that cannot be utilized, like for instance, I want to donate the smell of the perfume. Maybe you want to donate the smell of the perfume so someone can utilize. It is considered something that cannot be utilized because it is something abstract, and it's not a real. It's not a real benefit of someone who will receive it. So that's why the first condition of asset that being donated should be mutakawam. And the second one is called ainun maklumun, clear and definite in its goods and characteristic. In some traditional ways, some students in the Islamic boarding school, we call it Indonesia pesantren, there is a tradition to donate themselves as wakaf. So they will say like that, I will donate myself, I will give myself as a wakaf to this institution, or maybe to the school, meaning that he will spend the entire life of him, and he will give everything. Maybe he will teach, he will serve the school for the whole time. So they call it as wakaf. But actually, if we look into the fiqh of wakaf, we cannot say that it is wakaf because it is not clear in terms of goods and characteristic. If he already donated himself, as a wakaf, doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve of himself anymore. So that become a debate among academics regarding is it permissible to donate themselves or not. But the term actually is used in some students to express their willingness to serve the school. But if you look into the condition, ainun ma'lumun, it is not fulfilled actually as the characteristic of asset being endowed. And the third condition of asset being endowed, it should belong to Waqf, meaning that someone cannot donate the asset that doesn't belong to him or her. Let's say I want to donate a motorbike, but it belongs to my brother. I cannot do that. It is not permissible unless my brother really wants to donate that motorbike as a wakaf, and me on behalf of him will give it and as a wakaf. It is okay, but without his consent, without his permission, I can donate it as a wakaf. So only just asset belongs to the donors can be transferred or can be endowed as wakaf. It should also be separated, meaning that the communal ownership is not allowed to be endowed as wakaf. Like for instance, in some community, they have a piece of land, or maybe we call it a tanah adat, or maybe the entire family has the land, and one member of the family want to then donate it as a wakaf. It is not allowed because the ownership is not clear and it belongs to the some group of people. So only the asset that belong to someone and the ownership is clear, that can be transferred or can be endowed as the asset. How about the organization that I mentioned previously? The asset belong to the organization is very clear because based on the law, the ownership belongs to the unit or the entity itself, whether it is organization or maybe the institution. So it doesn't contradict the principle of the separation of the ownership. And regarding the quantity, majority of ulama or jurists agree that there is no limitation regarding the amount of asset to be donated, meaning that once you have some amounts of money, or maybe you have a certain kind of asset, you can give it all. But there is also some condition that to be that we have to be focused, whether the Waqf or the donor, they have heirs or not. Because some jurists say that if they have no kids, they have no heirs, they are allowed, it is permissible for them to donate all assets they have for the benefit of the society or benefit of ummah. But if they have heirs, they can only, or they are allowed only to donate up to 1/3, while the rest of the wealth should be given as the waris for the heirs. So Islam is very concerned regarding the prosperity of the heirs. So it is not a lot for someone to donate all their wealth while they still have kids or children. So only up to 1/3 of the wealth can be donated as a waqf. This is in case of they have some children. And regarding the types of waqf, we will discuss this one in the next slide. But in general, the types of waqf can be immovable assets like land, buildings, or in movable assets, like maybe nowadays cash waqf, or maybe someone donate the gold, or maybe other asset which is considered as movable assets. These types of waqf in general. And also there is an issue regarding the change of designation. What is the change of designation? In Islam, we call it istibdal. Istibdal meaning that the manager of waqf, or the one who is transferred to administer or to manage a waqf asset, can change the form of waqf itself, or maybe the purpose of waqf itself, as long as there is a bigger priority and benefit when he changed it. Let me give an example. There was a case, one waqif or donors, he donated a piece of land on the top of hill. So he asked the manager to create or to not to create to establish a school, Islamic boarding school on that piece of land. But after investigate the surrounded environment, the manager decided not to build any school there because it is very difficult to reach. So he approached the waqif and proposed, what if the land will be sold and will be replaced with a piece of land on a very more strategic and at the more strategic location, while the purpose mentioned by the donors of waqif can be fulfilled. So his intention to build a school or maybe Islamic boarding school can be fulfilled at another location. So we can call it like istibdal or a ruslah, change maybe the form of or asset, or maybe change the purpose of the asset itself. Like also, for instance, in some minority Muslim country, Muslim minority country, someone donate his house for a temporary masjid, or temporary mosque, because at the time there was no mosque at the area. Throughout the time, there was another bigger mosque established near that area. Hence, the manager decided not to use that building anymore because they already have the bigger one. And later on, they proposed to the waqif to change the use of the building, not for the prayer, but for the library or maybe something else. It can be applied as long as the priority and the needs for the society is bigger than the initial purpose. But in Indonesia, it is stated in the law that the decision to change the purpose or maybe the destination of the asset should be on the approval of Indonesian Waqf Board. So the manager of Waqf, or we call it letter Nazir, they cannot change it by their own decision, but should be on approval by the Indonesian Waqf Board. All right. Now we move to the beneficiaries. Beneficiaries, or we call it Mawquf alai. Who are the beneficiaries? Beneficiaries refers to any parties that is appointed by the Waqf. So Waqf has the right to appoint who are the beneficiaries. So like me, for instance, I want to donate my Waqf, and I mentioned the beneficiaries of what my Waqf should be an orphans in this area, meaning that they are my beneficiaries, they are my Waqf beneficiaries. Or maybe in another case, maybe the donors or Waqf will specifically mention that the beneficiaries of my Waqf should be my children or maybe my heirs, meaning that they are the beneficiaries of his Waqf. So anyone who are appointed by the Waqf during the establishment of the Waqf and will receive the benefit of Waqf itself, whether it is in terms of the allocation of the yields, in terms of the benefit of Waqf, is considered as the Mawquf alai. And in some opinion, the beneficiaries of Waqf can be Waqf itself. Waqf itself meaning that in the case of my Waqf, I will say that I will also entitled to get benefit from my own Waqf. Actually, this interpretation comes from the hadith that is narrated by Muslim, if I'm not mistaken, when Umar bin Khattab donate his piece of garden in Khaybar as a Waqf. Prophet Muhammad SAW mentioned that he should preserve the principle of the garden itself and donate the yields of the garden, and he can benefit from that garden. But the Prophet Muhammad SAW give restriction regarding the amount of the benefit someone get from his own Waqf. The Prophet said that as long as it is not enrich himself, so he is allowed to get benefit from his Waqf. But some jurists disagree with this opinion because they said that once an asset already donated, so the donors are no longer entitled to the benefit of the asset, except the rewards from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Okay, so there is the party who is entitled as the beneficiaries. The second one is to the heirs of the donors. We call it as Waqf ahli. Waqf ahli refers to Waqf which is addressed only to the relative of the donors, or maybe to the children of the or maybe to the offspring of the donors, and it is allowed as long as the purpose is for their benefit. But unfortunately, in many part of the Muslim world, this kind of waqf ahli, already abolished by the government, particularly in country like in Egypt, India. If I'm not mistaken, they already abolished this kind of waqf. We still can find the type of waqf ahli in some part of Indonesia. Some community are still practicing the waqf ahli, and if you look to the history, actually the Prophet companions like Abu Bakar, Talha, they practice the kind of waqf ahli. Once Abu Bakar donated his house, and he stated that he intended his house to be utilized, to be used by his relative, by his offspring, and once the offspring of him already end up, he was willing that the house will be taken by the public later on. So he did it actually. Also the waqf by Tolha, also kind of a waqf ahli. Beside that, beside to sell, beside to the heirs, waqf can also be addressed to the specific group of people or community. Like, and I mentioned previously, I can donate, or someone can donate a waqf to the community in this area, or maybe to the orphans in the area, or maybe some group of people. So it is the right of the donors or the waqf to determine who are entitled to be the beneficiaries of the assets. Also in Islam, non-Muslim, or sometimes you call it kafir zimmi, who are living under the protection of the Muslim government, they are also entitled to be appointed as the beneficiaries of waqf asset. But in one condition, as long as it is not used to accommodate their beliefs. For instance, someone donate an asset to be used as a church. This is not allowed, because it implies that he or she will accommodate their beliefs. So only for the social purpose, waqf or kafir or non-Muslim zimmi is allowed in the fiqh. Beside the waqf khas or specific party beneficiaries, there's also waqf for public, or we call it waqf am. Normally, the beneficiaries of waqf am are not mentioned very specific. For instance, someone establish a mosque, or maybe create a well. Anyone who get benefit from that property is allowed. So meaning that this was a kind of waqf am or waqf, public waqf. All right. Now we are moving to the waqf deed. Waqf deed, or we can call it siwat, or maybe in bahasa we call it ikrar. Waqf deed is kind of the agreement between the waqif and nazir. Nazir is the waqf manager. Basically, waqf deed is the declaration that show the intention. It reflects the intention and expression, whether it is orally or maybe in the written form from the Waqf to endow their property as Waqf by entrusting it to the Nadir. So we can understand that in the first place, making the Waqf deed in the writing form is not necessarily to be valid. So in Islam, once the declaration from the Waqf already done, it is valid in the first place. But in another place, due to some dispute regarding Waqf, so later on there is obligation for Waqf to write down his or her expression or maybe intention, so that it will prevent the dispute among his or her offspring later on, because it happened throughout the time. Like for instance, in one location, they already established a mosque or maybe madrasa, Islamic boarding school for sometimes, and later on, the children of the founders, they sue the manager of the property, claiming that the property belonged to them. That happened anywhere. So that's why in the Waqf law, it is clearly stated that all properties should be registered, first to be registered in the Indonesian Waqf Board, and also in the Ministry of Religious Affairs, in order to prevent the dispute among the children of the donors and the manager. And if we look the type of the akad in the Waqf, it falls under akad of tabaruk. Meaning that the transaction process is considered complete once the ijab or the declaration is pronounced by the Waqf. It was Umar bin Khattab, the one who first introduced the use of written declaration or Waqf deed in the past. I think Umar is one of very innovative companions of the Prophet, because he made many innovation regarding management, whether it is recording the recipient of zakat and this distribution of zakat at the time. And he also introduced the writing down the intention and the Waqf deed to protect Waqf. So this is one of the innovation made the Umar bin Khattab regarding the Waqf management that we still continue today. All right. Now we move to the discussion regarding the Waqf manager. Waqf manager is called Nazir. In Indonesia, we call it Nazir, but I think in some other countries, like in Pakistan, maybe in India, or maybe in some part of Malaysia, they call it Mutawalli. But actually, they are the same. Only the term is a little bit different. Who are Nazir or Mutawalli? Nazir or Mutawalli are the party who receive the Waqf asset from the Waqf and has the obligation to manage and develop it in a productive way, so it can give the benefit to the beneficiaries. So it is clear that Waqf doesn't belong to Mutawalli or Nazir. Nazir or Mutawalli only receive the trust from the Waqf donors or from the Waqf. So the ownership remains belong to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, while the Nazir or Mutawalli only have the right to manage it, to administer it. Who can be the Nazir or Mutawalli? In Indonesia, in the Waqf law, it is mentioned that there are three types of Mutawalli. The first one, Mutawalli can be personal, meaning that a person who is appointed by Waqf can be assigned as Mutawalli, or maybe organization or institution. In Indonesia, many institutional Mutawalli is in the form of foundation, or we call it yayasan. So it is protected by law. And beside having the rights to manage beside having the obligation to manage the asset become more productive, the Nazir or Mutawalli also entitled to receive the benefit of the Waqf yield or the of the Waqf. In Indonesia, the regulation stated that up to 5% of the yields of Waqf can be distributed to the Nazir or Mutawalli. So it implies that the Nazir or Mutawalli should not works in managing Waqf based on voluntary ways. So they are entitled to give some benefit from the Waqf itself. Okay, now regarding the types of Waqf, although I already mentioned in general types of Waqf, but let me more specific explain to you. Actually, Waqf can be categorized based on its purpose or its designation, and also based on the period of time, and also based on types of asset. Based on the purpose, Waqf is classified as Waqf Ahli, which is addressed to the family or maybe relative of the founders. Already explained this one. And if it is addressed for the benefit of the society, it is categorized as Waqf Khairi. Now we look into Waqf based on period of time. Traditionally, Muslim, I'm sure that Muslim around the world will consider Waqf should be permanent, because it is the way Waqf diverse from ordinary infaq or sadaqah. That's why in some other term we call Waqf as a perpetual charity. But some opinion of the scholar, some school of thought consider that wakaf can also be given for specified period of time, so not be permanent. So that's why wakaf is classified as wakaf mu'abbad, meaning that it is permanent or perpetuity wakaf, and also wakaf mu'akkad. This category can be subject of debate among scholars, but for your information, in Indonesia, in our wakaf law, this type of wakaf was applied. Also, if give implication to the recording and reporting in the accounting standard later on. And based on types of asset, we already mentioned this previously, wakaf can be immovable, movable in terms of cash, and also movable other than cash. Okay, before I move to the wakaf history, I give opportunity for any of you who want to address any comment or maybe question regarding the previous sections. Anyone? All right. Why I want to touch the issue regarding wakaf history, because I still remember one interesting quote from wakaf scholars, Professor Murad Cizatka. He mentioned in his book that if you want to make any effort to revitalize wakaf today, we have to learn from the history. Because once we fail to learn from the victory of wakaf in the past, we will not be able to revitalize wakaf today. I think this quote is very interesting because there are so many rich story of wakaf in the past that we can learn to revitalize wakaf today. And we will start from the pre-Islamic era. Actually, there is debate among the historian where was the first wakaf introduced in the history. Some says that wakaf already introduced before the period of Prophet Muhammad and his companion. But some say that it was only after the period of Prophet Muhammad wakaf was introduced. But when we scrutinize the historical evidence very careful, we will find that in the pre-Islamic era, there was a tradition of giving something out as donation. Of course, it was not called as wakaf at the time, but as a donation. Like, for example, in the ancient Egypt, in the Greek, it is called endowment, or maybe during the time of Prophet Muhammad when he established Kaaba and he dedicated it is the property of the Ummah. Some said that the inspiration come from the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. But of course, the Sharia, the teaching of doing wakaf only come after the period of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam moved or hijrah from the Mecca to Medina, the first thing that he did at the time was to establish a mosque, which is known as Mosque Quba, Masjid Quba. So it is considered as the first Waqf asset at the time, but the mosque, the Quba Mosque, the Masjid Quba, is categorized as the Waqf asset for the religious purpose, while Waqf asset for the benefit of the society at large was first introduced during the time of not during the time, but first practiced by Umar bin Khattab. I already mentioned this previously. It happened when Umar he came to Prophet Muhammad and he mentioned that he had a piece of land in the Khaybar, and he also mentioned that he has no better land like that. So this is the best piece of land he has, a garden in the Khaybar. And he seek advice from the Prophet. What should I do with this piece of garden? Because he wants better rewards. And Prophet Muhammad advised him to keep the principle of the garden and utilize only the benefit or the yields of the garden and give it to the poor, maybe to those who in the needs, to the travelers, and he can also take the benefit of the yields as long as it doesn't enrich himself. The history of Waqf of Umar in Khaybar later on were used to develop the fiqh of Waqf. So the jurists like Al-Khassaf. Khassaf is one of the students of Imam Hanafi. He was from the Hanafi school of thought. Developed a book of fiqh about Waqf based on this hadith. And Waqf by Umar was considered as the philanthropic Waqf in the history. While later on, many companions like Abu Bakar, Osman, Ali, they follow this tradition. Like for instance, Abu Bakar donated his house as a Waqf for his descendants, for his children. It is considered as Waqf Ahli. Umar donate a well in Rauma, in the area of Rauma. Ali also donate, if I'm not mistaken, this one also well in Yanbu. And throughout the time, Waqf developed very fast. For instance, in Fatimid era in the 10th century, there was Qadi appointed by the Sultan to supervise Waqf. At the time, Waqf being managed centralized, monitored by the Qadi who were appointed by the Sultan. But after the era of Fatimid, during the Salahuddin Ayyubi, which is called the Ayyubi era in the 12th century, Waqf was managed by the government, decentralized, meaning that the government only monitor it, but the authority to manage it left to the Mutawalli or Nazir. So Mutawalli or Nazir were given the authority to manage Waqf, and the government has no intervention of the Waqf management at the time. That's why we call it Waqf under the Ayyubid era is categorized as decentralization. During the Mamluk era, Waqf was used in more of variative way, like for educational system, to support the educational system, to support the economic infrastructure. Waqf also used to build a market, to provide a shop, and it is noted in history that Waqf become the pillars to support the government to provide many infrastructure for education, for social, and not only for religious purposes, but also for economic development. Okay, but the ultimate achievement of Waqf during the history was reached during the Ottoman era, or we know it as Turkey Usmani. Why it is considered as the peak of Waqf development? Because almost 3/4 of the property in the country at the time were Waqf. So you can imagine, whenever someone goes, they will find Waqf asset. Even there was a very popular poem at the time. Someone said, from his birth until he passed away, he always interact with Waqf asset. He was born in the hospital, which is Waqf asset. He was raised at the house, which is also Waqf asset. He goes to school, which is also considered as Waqf asset. He goes to mosque for performing prayer, which is also Waqf asset. He went to the market, which is also built on Waqf asset. He went to school, which is also Waqf asset. And when he passed away, he will be buried in the Waqf asset. So we can imagine that how amazing Waqf at the time. Even after the period of Ottoman era, there are thousands of Waqf assets then still contribute to the income of the nation for decades. And also the history notes that during the Ottoman Empire, or sorry, the Ottoman era, cash Waqf was first introduced. Imam Zuhri, one of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa, was considered as the one who introduced cash Waqf. And also, the most interesting fact that we can find in the history, during the Ottoman era, the Sultan is not only appoint a minister of Waqf, but also applied accounting for Waqf. And it is interesting to note that the Qadi, or the one who is in charge in monitoring Waqf, they will doing some audit on the financial statement of the Mutawalli. So there was a case when the Mutawalli or nazir was indicated mismanaged or misused the Waqf, the Qadi, based on the approval of the Sultan, give the punishment to the nazir. So Waqf accounting actually is not a new idea, but already practiced since the 15th century, and it is one of the success factors that contribute to the victory of Waqf during the Ottoman era. So accounting, recording, and also auditing already practiced during that time. What about in Indonesia? In Indonesia, actually, Waqf had been practiced once the Islamic kingdoms established in some area, like in Aceh, Mataram, and at the time, many Waqf asset was used by the ulama to against the Dutch colonial. Like for instance, they will collect people in the mosque or maybe madrasas to empower people to against the Dutch colonial. That's why it's not surprising that the Dutch colonial at that time restrict the activity of Muslim to establish Waqf, because the Dutch colonial aware once the Muslim is allowed to establish Waqf, they will use the Waqf asset later on to empower people to against the Dutch colonial. So it is also one of the reason why the regulation of Waqf in the past was very limited, and only after the independence, some years after the independence of Indonesia, we have our own specific Waqf regulation. Many factors that contribute the decline of Waqf, even though in the past Waqf was very powerful, that helped the government to support the infrastructure, to support the development of social education, and also the development of economics. But many factors after that contribute to the decline of Waqf, degradation of Waqf for centuries. So according to some scholars, factors like a moral degradation, secularism, and crisis accountability among the mutawalli contribute to the degradation of Waqf. Some mutawalli being corrupted, and it happened in many parts of the world. Very sad to say that moral degradation, secularism, particularly that happened in the after the era of Ottoman, give biggest contribution to degradation of Waqf. Also, the collapse of the Khilafah. We all know that after 1920s, after the collapse of the Turkey Osmania, and it took over by the Mustafa Kemal, all Waqf asset in Turkey was taken over by the government, and it also give influence to the tradition of Waqf to the whole part of Muslim world. And only in the last few decades, we can say maybe in the last 2 decades, there was awareness among Muslim society that we need to revive this historical Waqf institution. Why? Because we all witness that poverty happen everywhere, and sadly to say that most of Muslim countries, they suffer from the poverty. In fact, we can use Waqf as the tools, as the pillars to support the government to provide the educational system, health system, and also to develop the economic system. And we cannot deny that there is a limitation among the Muslim governments to provide infrastructures. That's why Waqf is an answer, actually. Waqf can be a support for the government. And it is IRTI and IDB in the front line of the effort to revive Waqf through the seminar, to the international Waqf conferences, to the research on Waqf. They provide scholarship for doing master, PhD research. And alhamdulillah, I witnessed that in the last 10 years, there was so many publications regarding Waqf. Also, there is law enforcement, particularly Indonesia. I think countries like Malaysia also struggling to provide their own Waqf law recently. And not only regarding Waqf law, in Indonesia, we also have a Waqf accounting standard. And I think Indonesia, in this regard, is more advanced compared to other countries because we take initiative to develop accounting standard for Waqf even before AOIRV issue the accounting standard for Waqf. So this is the good news for development of Waqf in Indonesia. Why Waqf accounting is very important? Before Prof. Mahfuz will explain and elaborate more regarding what is Waqf accounting. Accounting for Waqf in Indonesia is stated in accounting standard number 112. Why it is important? Because once we have accounting standard for Waqf, it is believed that will increase the accountability of the mutawalli. Before we have the accounting standard, all mutawalli, they have their own way to disseminate their report. Some mutawalli, they have their own initiative to produce their financial statement. Some, they don't even make any publication regarding Waqf financial statement because there is no standard at all, no standard at all. Some, they refer to the accounting standard for zakat, some refers to accounting standard for non-profit organization. So in order to increase the accountability of mutawalli, we believe that accounting standard for Waqf is very important. And due to the fact that Waqf is a public property, Waqf does not belong to person. Waqf does not belong to Nazir. Waqf does not belong even to the Waqif. Waqf belong to the public property. Therefore, accountability to a wide range of stakeholders is very important because public at large will put their eye on how Waqf being managed, whether Waqf already give the benefit to the society or not. And also, by providing reporting on Waqf, it will enable Nazir or Mutawali to measure, to evaluate the performance, whether they already achieve improvement or not. It can be assisted by the reporting. And also, it can attract the new Waqif. I'm sure that you agree that nowadays, donors or Waqf become smarter. They then don't care how much money being collected. It's not their concern, but how the mutawalli or nazir utilize or manage the money, then can give benefit to the society. It is more important than how much money being collected. That's why the integrated reporting included financial reporting and non-financial reporting will give the picture, the whole picture of the management of Waqf itself. And also it will attract the new Waqf. Some Waqf may be still confused whether I want to donate my Waqf to this institution or not, to this Nazir or not. But today, I'm sure that Waqf will choose the more transparent, the more accountable Waqf to donate their asset to just kind of Nazir or Mutawali. And of course, Waqf accounting can be a controlling device for Waqf regulator, for the government, for the Indonesian Waqf Board, for the Ministry of Religious Affairs to evaluate, to measure the achievement of Waqf as a whole in the nation. Because I'm sure that the government already put the target to bring Waqf into revival, and also put Waqf as one of the instruments to as part of the economic development, not only for the Muslim but also for the nations. Now, before I end up my presentation, I will highlight the differences between accounting and management system for Waqf, zakat, infak, and sedekah, and also for humanitarian social institution like a philanthropy organization. For sure, the accounting standard for Waqf will refer to accounting standard number 112, and the reporting entity is Waqf entity itself, whether it is in the form of foundation or maybe in the corporate or any other form, but we can say that the reporting entity is Waqf entity. Regarding the accounting system for zakat, infak, and sadaqah, it refers to accounting standard number 109, while the reporting entity is AMIL, and accounting system of humanitarian social institution or philanthropic organization, it refers to interpretation of accounting standard number 55, and the reporting entity is the fund manager itself. Okay, I think that's for the introduction of Waqf. It already covered the definition of Waqf, the pillar of Waqf, and also I touched some issue regarding the historical background of Waqf. So I welcome any comments and any question from the participants. I hope you can benefit from the little sharing that I made to you. Okay, I give back to Sister Amelia.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Do you have any question, guys? If someone have a question, you can raise your hand and unmute your audio, or you can chat on the comment box below.
Yeah, maybe you can write down in the chat room. Anyone? Okay. From Nasrina Khaira, I have questions here. What is the law if the land or object that have been donated are then asked to return by the heirs? Okay, thank you, Sister Nasrina. As I mentioned previously, there were so many cases when the heirs or maybe the descendant of the donors, they claim the asset that already met as the waqf by the wakil. No, actually, of course, it is not allowed by the Sharia rules. Of course, it is not permissible. But we are not living in the country that the positive law is more powerful than the traditional law, or even the sometimes in some circumstances the Sharia law. That's why, let's say, if the heirs they can prove they have the certificate of the land, then later on they claim the asset belong to them, they will win in the court at the end. That's why the regulator and the government wants to protect the existence of Waqf asset through the registration of Waqf asset. Sorry, the registration of Waqf asset. So once the Waqf asset already registered, the certificate of Waqf will be provided, meaning that the Waqf already protected by the positive law. Hence, if the heirs or maybe the children or maybe the offspring of the donors will later on claim that asset, Waqf already protected in both in Sharia and the positive law, and also based on the stated in our positive law. If it happen, the regulator like Indonesian Waqf Board should involve in resolve this problem. So I can say that it's not easy to the heirs to claim the Waqf asset once the asset already certificated. So the certification of Waqf is one of the protections made to preserve Waqf asset from the unnecessary claim of the heirs. Okay. I hope my response answered the question.
Okay, thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for Mr. Hidayatul. Anyone want to ask?
Okay, you're welcome, Sister Nasrina. Anybody else?
Or maybe they already understand about
I hope so.
About the material, and it's very insightful.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm afraid that I'm not really clear in the explaining the topics. But I just received the message from Prof. Mahfuz. He just landed, and I think he will join the Zoom after break, I think. and he will elaborate more on the topic of Waqf accounting, because he was the one
Okay.
who developed the standard in the Institute of Chartered Accountant. Okay, is it enough, Sister Amelia?
Yes, sir. Maybe we can move to the next agenda, that is documentation.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
Mr.
Thank you so
Hidayatul
much
for
for
the
having, thank you so much for having me. Really
the-
my honor
yeah.
to share the knowledge with you all. And I hope you guys will contribute to the development of Waqf, either as the students in promoting the revitalization of Waqf, or maybe you can participate as a donors, because nowadays to be a Waqf, not necessarily you have to wait until you become rich, but you can contribute, whether you want to donate like 50,000 rupiah, so maybe you want to allocate one of your pocket money as a Waqf. It can nowadays through cash Waqf in many Waqf institutions. And you can also contribute to your research. Later on, maybe you want to do some research. I think there are so many opportunities for you to conduct research related to either maybe Waqf accounting, Waqf management, and many issues in Waqf. This is my concluding remarks, Sister Amelia. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Hidayat, for the attractive material. Hopefully, it can help the audience to have a better understanding about accounting for Waqf institution. We're turning to the last agenda, which is closing. As the master of ceremony, I would like to apologize for any mistakes during this event. And finally, I would like to say thank you to all of you and to Mr. Hidayat. Before leaving this event, please kindly everyone turning on your camera, and we want to take the picture for documentation. Okay, everyone is ready? Okay, I will count on 1, 2, 3. Okay, once more, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so here we are on the final. Thank you so much for joining this event, and see you on the next event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. May I leave?
Maaf, sir.
Can I leave the meeting?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Assalamualaikum.
thank you so much, sir.